18th board meeting. Yes, November 18th board meeting. If we take a look at the agenda, and if everybody is okay with that, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as is? Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Nope. Okay, hearing none. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as it is?
Motion made.
Motion made by John Quinn, seconded by
I'll
Mary
second.
Kim. Okay, seconded by Mary Kim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. That moves us on to the non-discrimination policy. And I will kick that over to Eugene.
Right. Again, good evening, everyone. Thanks for attending. We have it seems like we have a pretty decent agenda. We're going to attempt to kind of talk to you, give you an update on the non-discrimination ordinance. There's a couple of things that have happened since our last meeting, some new details that kind of have popped up. A part of the email I sent out late, we sent out the most recent or the final draft of the non-discrimination ordinance. There's a couple of changes in there. Specifically, first is really the transportation piece. Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to call a point of order on myself since nobody else got it. But technically, we just approved the agenda and we skipped right past approving the minutes.
Yes. And we have public comments too. So that is also
public comments as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So can we circle back real quickly and approve the minutes as submitted, unless anybody has any discussion or comments on it? I will take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by David, seconded by
I'll second it.
by John. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We have the minutes submitted. Thank you for that. Again, apologies. Somebody should have called me on that. And that officially moves us forward to the non-discrimination policy.
Oh, and we do have public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see it on the. Okay. I assumed that that would be submitted with the included, since it's directed toward the non-discrimination. I assumed that they would be submitted with that. Are you saying that they would be a separate order of business, or?
I think we have the ability to kind of decide. We have a public comment section that we can then.
Okay.
I guess
I just was following the agenda, and so since it wasn't on there, I was just going to include it under the as Exhibit A under the non-discrimination ordinance.
Yeah. We updating the agenda. I'm not sure if everyone received the newest agenda, but we added that piece to
Yes.
Be your comment to me before.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's what it is. I think
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
we're looking at the updated agenda, which does have as item 3 public comment.
Okay. So I am looking at the old one, evidently. All right. So then in that case, we have received public comment from Mr. Steve Sonnenberg. It relates directly to the issue of the non-discrimination ordinance. He made 5 or 6 key points that I will just kind of include as a bulleted item. So he noted that the protected class wasn't consistent across all NDOs yet. Those are things that are addressed in this current version of the NDO. Pointed out the need for an MOU. He pointed out or asked the question in terms of what further action by the city attorney would be if the CRC was unable to resolve an issue. He asked what the penalties would be with regard to a guilty verdict, presumably. And he asked for definitions of the specifically itemized features of the protected class. And he noted that he had a question on the public transportation. So, and also about the legal penalties, which was kind of a second comment on that section. So with that, I would just say that I would ask for us to accept his letter into the public record. It will be part of that, and many, if not all, of the points will be addressed in the course of Eugene's walking us through where we are with the NDO. And some things like the public transportation portion of it are moot, again, as of a result of activity that has taken place with the NDO.
Yep.
Can I have a motion to accept what I'm going to call Exhibit A into the public record? Did everyone have a chance to see the comments?
That was something that wasn't posted.
It wasn't sent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if we need to officially
Accepted
vote
into
on
the
that.
public record?
Yeah, I think it's just a part of the public record, very much like this meeting.
Okay, so with that said, then I would just simply submit this as part of the public record.
Eugene, these are very similar to what he made at the commissioners meeting. Is
Yes.
that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost identical.
So,
And so
okay. Go ahead, Eugene.
And so that actually is a good segue into the NDO, because we do address some of those in some of the newest versions. So you all should have kind of the final draft of, I say that loosely, depends on what happens tonight, of the NDO. And so there's a couple of things, just want to kind of start from kind of the top. This is something that we were charged to do as staff from our commissioners to really move forward. We were planning on having a recommendation for this meeting for our December 7th meeting. We actually, a couple of the commissioners can't make that meeting. And so there was a November meeting established, which will be next Tuesday on the 23rd. And so we wanted to have something, make a recommendation here. And then they'll have the chance to officially pass it on the 23rd for next Tuesday. So we've been diligently working on this. Mary Ann has been spending late nights on this and trying to work what we currently have in front of you as far as the final version. So we do recognize that this is not public yet, but this will be going out a part of the agenda for next Tuesday. So people will have a chance to see it before the commissioners officially vote on it. But there are a couple of changes in what we discussed last time. One of which is the transportation piece. After we met with CRC, had a couple of discussions afterwards from our public meeting with them. They pointed out that they actually do not enforce the transportation piece. Our ordinance was really addressing public accommodation as well as transportation. They don't enforce transportation. They have another agency that actually does that component. So they're not essentially prepared to do that for the city or the county. And so this will be something that we'll more likely pull out of our ordinance at this time, because we haven't identified an agency to actually enforce that piece. And so that is kind of a new change. Part of that, that was also part of one of the public comments that we heard. And so answering that question. Also the MOU, that is something that we said really from the beginning that's something that's going to be in process. Because we're coordinating with 3 government entities, it's going to take some time to craft the language. So this is attorneys all working together. That's going to take time. And so we do recognize that one of the things that we're looking to do is set a projected effective date in April. A part of kind of the recommendation if this board decides to do that. So the idea is to pass something with an effective date in the future or in 2022. It will allow us to kind of craft and work with all of the town attorneys, city attorneys, county attorneys to get that final language. The plan will be to actually, once that language is crafted, have an opportunity for the public to view it, but also have some informational sessions prior to that date. There's a chance that the date we might be on time or we might not. If that changes, the Board of Commissioners will then make a decision on if that date needs to be pushed out a little bit further to give more time to kind of fine tune the details of that. And so the public will have opportunity to see it and also discuss it and weigh in as well. The other piece in part of the details is within that, buried in that, is the comment of any further action. So the idea is that it will go through the CRC process, which is kind of a pretty detailed process. We share some of the information on what it will potentially look like. Going through that same process, they have kind of appeal within their process to another set of committees within CRC. If things are not conciliated at that point, then it will go to our town attorney. And then, so the question is, when it goes to the town attorney, what happens then? So we still are in the process of crafting what that potentially can look like. That it's going to take some time. We want to be consistent with some of our other counterparts there. So this is something that's a detail that needs to be worked out, a part of the whole entire agreement. And so we do recognize that that is not a fully baked process at this point. And one of the other pieces was the definitions of some of the new protected classes that we are adopting. And a part of that, we were able to get some definitions specifically of those topics. That's also what you will see in your draft. So that kind of addressed, Mr. Sonnenberg's comments were not just isolated by themselves. We have gotten comments from the public regards around those topics. And so we felt necessary to address those. And they were honestly really good comments. I think when we talk about things, definition, I think as best we can be specific. And we have done that with our current draft that you have. And so moving forward, there was one other comment that as far as the protected classes, and we can have some full discussion here. One of the suggestions was political affiliations being a protected class. That is been was a couple of notes that have been proposed in the public comment and public outreach process. We did have a public engagement process on November 8th. So we heard from the public then. We were able to educate them on kind of what this is and where we are to date. So that was one of another comment that came up a couple of times. That's something that this board can discuss if that they feel the need to add that as another protected class. Mary Ann can weigh in on if that makes sense or not. And so what we're currently looking at for the non-discrimination ordinance is really taking out the transportation piece at this moment. Also defining the definitions which we have, understanding that the MOU and the details of that in as regards to enforcement or a fine, it still needs to be worked out. We're trying to be consistent with our counterparts on this as well. And those are kind of really the big items that have changed a little bit since you guys saw it at our last meeting. So I guess with that information, are there any general questions? Again, we are are pushing forward via our leadership to get something in front of them. And so not necessarily ideal as far as the timing, but we are trying to respond as best we can for staff. So I apologize for some of the lateness of it. We are trying to get a pretty decent product out that they feel comfortable passing. And so thus some of the delays to getting this to you a little bit earlier. Typically, we would like to get this to you a couple of weeks early so you have time to digest it a little bit, but the nature of kind of the assignment requires us to kind of work on it and then get it to the folks that need to get to it before we get to next Tuesday.
So Ken, before we have questions, sorry, Mary Kim, Thank you for all of that, Eugene. Mary Ann, can I also ask you to kind of, do you have anything that you would add, or how would you weigh in, add to what Eugene has just walked us through? And then we'll go to questions.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all again. So Jean kind of summed up the transportation piece. Unfortunately, we don't have a review committee, and the board was really concerned. We had a lot of comments concerned about what type of a committee would be, looking at the peers and doing the reviews. So until we have that, I think the easiest thing is to just remove that. It seemed to be pretty limited in Davidson as well. I mean, it would be for Uber drivers and, taxi drivers, but it doesn't seem like we have a lot of transportation in Davidson. And as far as the protected classes on the political view, I don't really have a strong opinion about it. I think it's a matter of how do you show the violation? How do you show the proof? And, you all have the experience in the equity department, whether or not you think that is a concern to you all. But yeah, Jean kind of summed it up. And if you have any questions, the enforcement piece, we are trying to align with Charlotte and with the county, and they are still working on their resolution, their period at the end of the ordinance. I think we need to at least put something out there, which is why I have in there indicated we could do injunctive relief, which would be to ask the shop owner or the service provider to cease and desist whatever behavior. We could ask for a type of a civil forfeiture that are similar to our other ordinances. So that's pretty much our recommendation at this time.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Okay, so to Mary Kim, since she was the first one to.
I've had a couple of people ask me, and I'm afraid maybe I've asked this before, and if I have, I'm sorry. And it seems like a really simple question, but I wasn't able to really give an answer. And the question is, why can't we just say in our statement, we won't discriminate against anybody, rather than try to list out all these groups? Is that obvious? Am I really missing something really big? I don't know why we can't do that.
Jean, you want me to
Yes.
kind of give an opinion? Well, I think the concern is that there are groups that are being discriminated against, specific groups, and they have felt that their rights have been violated. And so this gives them a specific mechanism, kind of recognition, and a mechanism to seek legal attention and to seek remedy.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
And my question is really more just related to the two opening paragraphs of the document. And I'll start with the second paragraph, which kind of reads, whereas the purpose and intent in enacting this ordinance is to promote public welfare, principles of inclusion. I noticed that inclusion is not mentioned in the opening statement with diversity, and I was wondering if that was intentional. So where it says where the town of Davidson welcomes all people and recognizes the importance of diversity. I was wondering if there was an intentional reason that it doesn't say recognizes the importance of diversity and inclusion. And then the second part of that is in listing out kind of the purpose and the intent. Going back to that second paragraph, equity is not mentioned, and I think that the town of Davidson has made a tremendous commitment in really pursuing and achieving equity, and so it feels like a glaring omission in a document like this one. And I was just wondering if that was discussed, and if was an intentional omission.
Gerald, I think it says equal treatment for all. So in the second paragraph, I would,
It does.
you don't think that's equity?
Well, generally speaking, in the context of discrimination, it isn't. It isn't viewed as, they aren't viewed as synonymous. Equal is typically viewed and defined as providing the same input to everyone, whereas equity focuses more on ensuring that everyone achieves the same outcome.
But what the term says is treatment, not the, so we're not talking about equal opportunity. So maybe that's splitting
Yeah.
hairs, I'm not sure, but like, does anyone else, go ahead.
And I think it's totally possible that, the intention there with equal treatment means the same. I just looked at it from the standpoint that, the town of Davidson has taken a major step and really bringing to prominence the focus on equity, and so if that's just a matter of, word choice, but it's got the same meaning, that's great, but I certainly, just looked at that in the context of the commitment that the town has made and want to make sure that that's being honored and held up.
Well, I'm open to whatever your committee, we can modify the language. As far as the inclusion part, Gerald, we say we welcomes all people. You don't think welcomes is strong enough to suggest inclusion, or do you think that word inclusion needs to be somewhere?
I would weigh in with
Yeah.
Gerald and say, I think it's a good add to just add diversity and inclusion, because it's very specific. It really is. And so, and I don't think that changes anything other than clarifies, the intent. But I don't think it substantially changes that first paragraph. So I would be in favor, if everyone would agree, to just adding diversity and inclusion and the importance of. And I saw Ellen. Yeah, Ellen.
Yes, I'm just building on what both Gerald and Jennifer are saying. I would say in that first paragraph that we welcome all people and recognize the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because that's so how it's so, it's referred to. And it's kind of like the umbrella statement of what needs to be done.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
I think that's great, Ellen. And that just puts it right up front.
Yeah.
And it then establishes the tone for the intent and the impact of the rest of the document. I think that would be great.
Okay. All right, done.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to now circle back to Mary Kim's comment a little bit and the discussion of the word equity and how we're applying it, because as Gerald just brought it forth, what he said was equity is equal outcomes. And I don't know that we can guarantee equal outcomes. I think that to be able to say equal treatment, or what he said specifically is that equity does not equal treatment. It is equal outcomes. And there I do have, I think that's a caution there potentially to say, like, how do we guarantee equal outcomes? And what does that mean to say equity equals equal outcomes? And so that would be I think that needs to be understood amongst, so that, again, to Mary Kim's point, how do we answer when we're asked the question of that, and in the context in which, we're talking about things here, again, like how are we guaranteeing equal outcomes? Because because they might not mean the same thing to, I mean, people may not want the exact same things. And so that just becomes muddy to me. I don't know, but maybe that's my understanding or lack thereof of things.
And I could also weigh in, and Gerald's right, when you talk about equity, it really is referring to outcomes, and it's almost specifically in a racial kind of context as well.
Okay.
And we will actually talk through that when we actually do have our REI trainings. It gets really down to kind of the meat of kind of what equity really means. It's really talking about outcomes. The other thing I would also kind of, if we even step back, this ordinance may not necessarily equal the same outcomes, but it's really about kind of
I am on Zoom call.
about essentially the
No,
fair treatment of
no.
like residents.
It's more about behaviors.
Right. And so this is, for example, if someone goes into a business and is denied service, the whole goal of this is for that person that may have been discriminated against has a point of recourse and a process to actually file a complaint. Now, what the outcome may be, it really depends on the process and what does that conciliation process look like and what folks agree to. And so I think the end goal here is for folks to be recognized and have a place of recourse. I think that's kind of the essence of what we're talking about here when it comes to a public accommodation and people being treated fairly in those establishments.
And Jennifer, I will just say to that point, you know, I noticed as we go further, see section A1 actually describes equity in this context. It describes it perfectly because it's focusing on the full and then equal enjoyment of the goods and services. So, I mean, that really is describing equity in this sense. Yeah, and so by putting it as Ellen recommended in that opening sentence, it then kind of provides that context for the remainder of the document.
And in that context, I agree. Like in that context, that's how I understood, I guess. So what threw me is again, like, to me, this makes sense, that phraseology there. I didn't interpret it as, again, an entirely equal outcome, because again, I guess maybe that's the literal part of me. And so, yeah, I appreciate the kind of the distinction or the clarification there. So then we come back to this issue of that first opening paragraph, and the language contained, the sentence of being diversity, inclusion, and equity, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that where we are, or are we, I think we need direction. I'm seeing a lot of head shaking, nodding. Okay.
I move that we change the language to what Ellen has recommended.
Okay.
I second the motion.
So that was John Quinn made the motion, David Holdhauser seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Jennifer, I
Yes.
don't know if you took
Aye.
roll at the beginning of the meeting. I'm not sure if you took a roll call.
I did not. We typically haven't. And
Okay.
some people joined after the fact.
Okay.
But we could.
I think you need to if you're going to take a vote, just so that you can establish that there's a quorum.
Okay. So thank you. Let's go take a moment to do a quick roll call for the sake of the minutes and establishing a quorum and Annie's note taking. So Jennifer Fear, present.
Annie Porges present.
You want to just, I'll go through as I see you on my screen. Is that okay? David Holdhauser,
Here.
Laura Belcher,
Here.
Mary Kim,
Here.
Annie Porges, here, Mary Walsh.
Here.
Thank you. John Quinn,
Here.
Elizabeth Wilson.
Here.
Okay. All right, thank you for the, for the redirect, Marianne.
Gerald, right.
And so then I'd say the ex officio members, that establishes the quorum, ex officio members, Ellen Donaldson,
Davidson Community Foundation and
Gerald
Gerald
Wright. Oh, and Gerald Wright.
Here.
And Jennifer, I am actually ex officio too.
Oh. I kind of know that. Thank you. Okay,
That's
so
okay.
Laura. All right. Annie, you got that? All right. So circling back around, we have a unanimous vote to change the language as previously noted. And it was no ayes. I'm sorry, no nays. And I think that moves us forward through the rest of the body of the document. So let's kind of keep going the way that we were. David?
Yeah, can I ask Marianne a question about political affiliation? I actually think that's an interesting point. So Marianne, you said the protected classes as defined are kind of legal harbor classes. Is political affiliation in parallel to that? Does that also meet that definition to you?
I think some people would argue it should be in the ordinances. I think California has really been progressive about the political views being a protected class. I haven't heard a whole lot in North Carolina, but I mean, that's your all expertise to make a recommendation on that. I don't have a strong opinion either way. So it's up to you all. You're the experts.
I will say, David, to answer that question, in one of the very, very early iterations of this, I had included that as well in the protected classes, because I just went back to my old NRCS, and it's one of the NRCS. So it's a federally, it's been adopted into that. And it's just so that, if somebody is out protesting something, or a pipeline or whatever, you can't be retaliated against for participating in a public protest or for being libertarian or whatever. So so it does align with, again, where some of the movement is.
Eugene, does the enforcement or the group in Charlotte, CRT, do they, if I've got the name right, do we have to match the language of what they can mediate or deal with, or not?
No, I think as we define our protected classes, they just follow that. So there's not a exact alignment when it comes to the protected classes. Just as a note, there are kind of several kind of levels to it. You have the federal level that are that have a certain amount of protected classes. The county has theirs, and then the city has theirs. There's a lot of duality in a couple of those, but there are a couple of new terms identified really in both. We tried to include everyone, including the federal, the county, and the city within that group. I will note that none of them actually have the political affiliation as a protected class. I'm not sure how much that was discussed on those levels, but I do know that that's not in there. We try to be very consistent with what's already kind of on the record.
I have a question. It just occurred to me. Does the political group class designation, I'm trying to envision what a violation of that might be. I mean, that just simply goes under freedom of speech, doesn't it? I mean, do we really need to, is that redundant is what I'm asking?
So again, we want to keep this in the context of public accommodations. If there are voter rights that speak to a lot of these kind of issues from a political standpoint, but the idea is if someone was whatever party goes into establishment denied service because somehow they have self-identified with a political party and then denied service. Now, I think to your question, how does someone know that? That's another question. I'm not sure what triggers that. Most of the protected classes are almost self-identified from the eye, and so I think that there is some subjectivity there of what a violation could actually look like. And so Mary Ann can add more to that, but that's something else to consider.
I think some of these are invisible classes, though. A veteran, if someone's wearing a hat with a certain candidate on it, but there has to be a preponderance of evidence or a reasonable amount of evidence if it's going through mediation that someone was discriminated against based on that affiliation, based on that protected class. So in most cases, it's going to have to be, I will not serve you, or I want you out of my store, because because you're wearing a rainbow hat, or you're green, or you're, touting some political view or something. So it's got to be pretty apparent. It's going to be difficult to show proof.
Interesting.
Just as a point of reference, the language, the non-discrimination statement that we have to include on all public outreach documents and stuff, it says you can't discriminate based on, all the stuff that we have in there, and then income derived from public assistance programs, political beliefs, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity, blah, 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 blah. And that's the two, I guess, sentences or two descriptions that would be in question here.
I have a question. How many comments has the town received urging them to consider adding political affiliation, discrimination based on a political affiliation as an issue? Have you received more than one comment or several comments?
We had at least 2 comments to that point. Again, it was 2. So.
Thank you.
You could see where somebody might, if you're at a sit-in or a protest or something like that, and it's on social media, and an employer sees that and disagrees with your participation in that activity. So social media, I think, would be the, how it would be maybe potentially held against you. So.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you have to keep in context of designing basic services that.
Right.
So it's not about employment at this point, but basic service that a business or a provider will deny service because of that.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Do we want to be, the statement was made earlier that we want to be as broad and preemptive, so to speak, as possible. And so do we feel that the inclusion of being denied service because you wanted to, I don't know, or employment, because of your social media activity or something like that? So that's the question, is, does that rise to the level of inclusion that we're talking about? Eugene said it has been mentioned, I guess, or brought up a couple of times. Where do we stand? Do you want me to I can take a kind of a straw vote and see where we are?
That would be great. I mean, to find out who believes that, especially in this polarized world we're in, that we should include political affiliation as one of the classes. That might be good.
Okay, so I'll just do if everyone can momentarily unmute so that, and I'll just take a straw vote. Who would be, so this would be if somebody were going to make a motion in favor of adding political activity and or affiliation to this ordinance. So I'll start with you, David. Okay, I see a hand up. That would be one. Ellen, or I'm sorry.
I don't think I'm a voting member,
Right,
but
right.
if I were, I would say yes.
Mary Kim,
I think yes. I mean, I'm still a little scratching my head on this one, but
yeah.
I don't want
Okay.
to overlook it either.
Annie, I see that would be 3. Mary Walsh. Mary, do you have a feeling
Yes.
one way or another? Okay, that would be 4. John,
Yeah, I'd probably be against it. It's difficult to enforce or define, but
okay, that would be 4, 1 against. Elizabeth?
I agree.
So that would be 5. So that's kind of a majority. So with that said, if somebody wants to make the motion, and then I'll in a second, and then we'll call the vote. And since we have some splits, then I'll need, instead of I'll do the vote by name then. Okay, so do we have a motion?
I started, so I'll make the motion that we include political affiliation. And Marianne, I'm looking for your word, civil.
Rights activity.
Yeah, civil activity.
Okay. So that would be the motion. Do we have a second? Motion from David Holthauser. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second from Annie Porges. All in favor, please say aye. I'll start with David.
Aye.
Mary Kim.
Aye.
Annie.
Aye.
Mary Walsh. I need to hear an aye or an nay. Aye, thank you. I think you're on a delay on my end. John Quinn.
nay.
That's 1 nay. Mary Elizabeth Wilson.
Aye.
All right, with that, the motion passes. Thank you for everyone's input. And
so with that being said, we'll add that to the definitions and add that to the protected classes.
all right, any other comments or questions about what is or isn't included in the definitions? Okay. Any other comments or questions about the, can we kind of take it by section basically? So we've gotten through the first opening summary. Are there any further comments or questions in terms of additions, changes to that opening section? And I'm going, by that I mean all the way down to the now therefore be it ordained. And yes, I just sang the Bill of Rights song in my head from that.
Jennifer, do you all agree to take out handicap or disability? I was thinking handicap is the same as disability. And so when I was doing definitions, I couldn't really find a definition that was different for handicap versus disability. And then I also want to know how you guys feel about the transportation being removed.
So I think that it's I think it's appropriate that at this time the transportation be removed for the reasons that you and Eugene have both covered. I didn't personally have any objections to that. Anybody else? Okay. Do you need a vote from us on that as well, the removal?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I do, I'm sorry, Jennifer, one thing, the only thing I can think of for transportation would be the trolley service that we sometimes offer, like at Christmas and Davidson and things like that. I mean, I don't think of Davidson as having really public transportation, but that is a event
Sure.
where we kind of provide, and there are other, I think there are other events where those trolleys are used to shuttle people from the neighborhoods into these events.
I think that the transportation, correct me if I'm wrong, Eugene, Marianne, but I think that it's being simply postponed, not entirely eliminated. It's
Oh,
being
yeah.
postponed until a point in time and at which it can be consolidated or aligned with those other policies, which.
Gotcha.
Yep. And just to piggyback on that, it's really about who can actually enforce that. CRC is going to, what we're recommending to enforce our public accommodations. They just don't do transportation. That's kind of really what the issues
Right.
is currently. If they did transportation, this would be a part of what we're talking about.
Mary Kim, I think you ought to think of this as Uber and Lyft and someone discriminating against giving a ride out of an Uber or Lyft platform.
Okay. Okay, so that takes us through full and equal advantages, therefore. So conciliation of complaints. Are there any major comments, concerns with regard to the language contained under that section? Okay, I'm not hearing anything major. Section B, where it says provisions, that seems like very, very well-defined legal speak to me. I think that Marianne knows her job very well. There's nothing that I could imagine adding or taking away from that.
Yeah, it's got to be good.
Yeah. Okay, and then we've talked about the definitions, and again, those are pretty straightforward. So with that,
Well, did Mary Ann get her question answered about handicap or disability? She did.
oh no, sorry, that was. I don't have. Have you looked at, Marianne, you said you looked at the legal definition and their interchange of their.
Yeah, I think in the, in most statutes, they talk about disability. They don't use the word handicap.
Yeah, I think that would.
I think that's kind of an older word that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Negative
Okay.
connotation, so.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you for all your input, so.
Any other comments? Any further discussion? Hearing none. The motions that we made, I guess we move forward with, and otherwise, Eugene, it's next Tuesday that this would be, that they're looking. So,
Yes. So what they would-
Marianne, the changes that we made, they're pretty straightforward and simple. They would be ready to be presented then to the commission on Tuesday? Okay, then in that case, can we have a motion to recommend approval and passage of the ordinance? You can use whatever language you want, but can we have a motion to that effect from somebody on the board?
So moved.
Motion made by Mary Kim.
Second,
Who made that?
David.
David, seconded by David, and I'll do a quick roll call. Starting with David, all in favor, please say aye. David?
Aye.
Annie? Mary Walsh?
Aye.
John? Mary Kim? Elizabeth?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for your input and work. Marianne, good job. Eugene, thank you for being a fantastic translator for a lot of things for us and keeping us in the loop.
All right.
Okay, that moves us to the bungalows. Eugene.
Right. And so this is a bit of topic that kind of really bubbled up since our September, I believe, 28th board meeting. Had several public comments regards to questions as far as maintenance and minimum housing code type of complaints or issues that was brought up through a couple of residents, but also precinct 206. That was heard by staff, but also our public or our commissioners, our town board commissioners. Since that point, we were able to work alongside with DHC, Mosaic, to kind of talk through what those issues are, and then a plan moving forward, how we get folks kind of on the same page when it comes to how we approach the issue and how residents can be heard in this process, but also feel safe in where they live. And so we had several kind of meetings since then. We've had one resident actually request for her unit to receive a minimum housing code inspection. We've been able to coordinate that with Mecklenburg County to do that. Just for a little bit of context, the town of Davidson has a minimum housing standard that they have as part of the town's ordinance. Mecklenburg County Code Enforcement actually enforces that for us. And so through that partnership, they were able to coordinate an inspection there. We heard additional concerns. And so one of the things that the town decided to actually just have all 32 units inspected. So everything's kind of clear and upfront. And so we're actually currently in the process of doing that. Gerald and his team, the management company, Mosaic, we were able to come together along with our code enforcement officer to map out a plan of how we do that. And so that process will get kicked off in a couple of weeks. We have a tenant meeting next Monday that we'll be able to communicate with tenants on the process, how that will go, expectations for them, expectations for the inspector, expectations for the management team to resolve any of the issues if found, and how we resolve those. So the plan currently right now is to start on November 30th, and the inspector will be out every 2 weeks to inspect a new building. Altogether, there are 9 buildings equaling out to 32 units. So this will push us out to the end of March when the last building will be inspected. One of the issues with the county in the sense of capacity, they have one inspector that covers all of North Mecklenburg County for minimum housing. And so we try to be efficient with our inspectors' time in how we kind of schedule things out. They thought that this was manageable by a 2-week process. It will allow them to inspect one building, 2 weeks later, be able to hopefully come back to do a re-inspection for that building and then start on a new building. So this will be consecutive 2 weeks all the way up until March. And then the idea is to actually have a follow-up meeting with the tenants to talk about the process afterwards, things that were found, things that were corrected, and then really help educate people on how to move forward of if they feel that their unit may be falling in under the minimum housing code, how to engage county code enforcement. But if there's a maintenance issue, what is that process like with the management team? So we want to be very clear on how and educate folks on the process. I think a lot of times what my synopsis is that folks that do live further out in the county don't necessarily know processes when it comes to minimum housing code. And typically because you have more newer homes and HOAs, those usually are covered from that side of things. So this will be a good opportunity to help educate folks across the board. The schedule will also be posted on our website so folks are able to see exactly where things are in the process. Because it's county code enforcement, they have their own process of how they inspect and then how they report out. Those are all public and those are available online. So anyone at any time can go search for a particular unit, find out if what violations may exist or don't exist, and then see exactly when they are closed out. And so this will be a very public process. And we are kind of excited to kind of move forward and get through the process. So folks feel that, folks understand that where they are is safe and habitable.
Okay.
But that's it. Got a couple questions.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
I'm actually asking for Annie, whose volume is out, but she's texting me on the side. Eugene, can you give an example of a minimum housing code that might be violated?
Yeah, so this is really kind of, you talk about life safety. So anything that will kind of resolve in that. So for example, it can be something as big as a cracked window allowing air to penetrate or rodents to penetrate a unit. It can be something as small as having an operating smoke detector. These are all kind of considered life safety issues. It's not kind of replacing carpet or blinds necessarily, but it's really about, is the unit safe and habitable to live in? And so this is really kind of speaks to the dignity of folks that live any place. I myself had several years of experience in code enforcement when I was with the city of Charlotte, and I've seen some really bad places. And you do wonder how some landlords are able to essentially get away with that. But I do think this is why the ordinance is in place, so folks have a standard of dignity in living. And so we want to make sure that standard is met. I have full confidence in that the bungalows will meet a lot of those standards. And I think everybody's kind of on the same page at this point of able to identify the issues and then work through them as we move forward. I'm excited about, this is another opportunity for partnership, very similar to Hoke, that folks come together and really help support our own communities in however way we can. So I think this is turns into a good example of how we can accomplish things working together. And I think that process already started thus far.
I see John's hand up and then Ellen.
Yeah, just a quick comment as somebody who's been involved as a kind of a citizen and observing and being in attendance at a lot of the meetings. One point, there are also, besides interior units, there's also common area, and hopefully that's being inspected as part of the as part of the inspector's process. Somehow they're looking at common areas like the stairs, which I know is a known issue. But I think from a committee perspective, one point that I was not thinking about at the beginning, I think I might have shared this one before, is affordable rentals is a key segment of the affordable housing portfolio that we have in the town. And so we need to kind of keep that in mind. And in the meetings with the commissioners, there was some talk about whether a minimum standard, the county's minimum standard, is the same thing as a minimum standard for Davidson. And maybe at some point in the future, we kind of think through that. And then the town, I think, needs to officially, as they're involved in either transferring land or money to invest in affordable rentals, and this could be in the Hoke lumber situation, there is some standard or requirement that passes to all owners along the way to maintain the property at whatever standard is set. So, you know, I don't think that happened in this case, and there's a lot of, you know, different points of view on this, but I think going forward that we should recommend the town has some kind of role in making sure that the reserves and the maintenance standards are set. And, you know, that might include inspecting reserve accounts and such. And then there is, you know, no person or group in the ecosystem of affordable housing who owners, or excuse me, renters, tenants can come to safely that is kind of a neutral party. You know, this one has a history, you know, of a lot of things that go back, you know, years. But, you know, how do we make it easy for people to escalate and not have the fear of, you know, if you're in an affordable rental unit, you might not have a lot of other options. So there's a kind of built-in weakness of position and maybe, you know, a worry that, you know, things won't be fair for you. And so you do end up, in this case, there was a lot of that going on, maybe out of sight of the leadership of some of the responsible organizations. So how do we make sure there's another avenue that's safe in this whole ecosystem that we're talking about? Because I think we'll, you know, ideally we'll have more affordable rentals, and you know, we have to make sure we don't create certain situations. And then, you know, this is not something that anybody's talking about, but some of these affordable rentals age out. You know, they get old, or they may be sold over time, and we want to have an eye on, you know, how to help whoever owns it to maintain the affordable status of the property, you know, in perpetuity, which, you know, Gerald and DHC is, you know, committed to in the case of the bungalows. But I think over time, again, it's a capability that we just need to have in the ecosystem somewhere where we're watching for that and, you know, making sure that we've got the right public support if it's needed to maintain that, especially if it was originally built with assets from the town. So those are just some comments. I think Eugene's done a great job of explaining where we are, but I wanted to make those observations. Thank you.
And I think those are actually really good comments. I think we actually have some good examples how we move forward as we were kind of, you know, I'll talk a little bit about our affordable housing plan process in a little bit, but I think this is a great opportunity to actually dive a little bit deeper when we go through our process, when we talk about rental and kind of the needs, but also I think we have a good example of hope of how we kind of ensure some of those pieces and affordability long-term via deed restriction, first a right of refusal for the town. And so it gives leverage for the town to be involved in these things. And I do think we're could be an active partner moving forward. What I like about kind of the town having some type of putting in affordable housing moving forward is that we're able to, you know, essentially lead the way. I think we're going to have some opportunity to actually build units moving forward. And once we kind of get through our process, but we're now in the driver's seat. And also when we work with developers, make sure we're getting the deed restrictions that we need and or opportunities very similar to Hope, where we were able to say, hey, listen, we have a great partner here to actually be the intermediate piece, and we want to make sure we're supporting that partner as best we can, so the affordability piece is done well in upfront. And so I think we have a good example of that now, but we also can look at other opportunities and tools that help kind of fortify that space of affordability long term, and also maintenance standards are met throughout the process.
Very good.
Ellen, did you? Oh, sorry, John.
Well, just say very good. I agree.
Okay, Ellen, I know that you had a question.
Well, actually, one comment first, because Davidson Community Foundation really led the HOKE project, the HOKE Affordable Townhomes. And one thing that has been made clear in the HOKE contract also is that the maintenance and upkeep is not going to be farmed out to an organization that is not taking it seriously, such as Mosaic. The questions that I had, Eugene, kind of relate to some of the comments you made earlier. What I'm hearing is that Mecklenburg County Inspector is really going to focus on safety, but I would be hesitant to tie in safety with dignity, because I think some of the dignity issues also are going to need to be addressed, but they may not fall under the umbrella of safety, that being items such as, blinds basically shredded, carpet in tatters, et cetera, et cetera. And then my question as it relates to the inspection is, you've got a time frame for the inspection. How quickly will the remediation follow the time frame of inspection?
Yep. And so that's actually a really good question. And so once a notice of violation, a case is open, so the inspector inspects the unit. They have, once that inspection is done, he does his report. They have 10 days to respond to that. So notice of violation sent out. 10 days from that notice of violation, the property owner management team responds to that. That is saying, hey, we received it. We recognize that these are violations. And then the conversation and the work begins between the inspector as well as the property owner and the management team. It is up to that group to formulate a plan to resolve those issues or violations and correct them. It really, that is kind of the meat of it. And I think you allow them to kind of do that process. Code inspectors are not trying to have cases open forever. They want to get things done efficiently. No. And so I think the real part is being able to communicate expectations. How we even set the schedule up is to help that along by having the inspector come out every 2 weeks. Well, the idea is to have any previous issues when they come out to the second inspection, they can do their follow-up inspections and then close out those cases and then do the new building follow and keeping that cycle. And so I'm pretty confident any major issues should be resolved. The only catalyst I will say this, or kind of a point, materials are kind of at an all-time high in the industry. It's just kind of where we are in the world. We're just in a weird space where materials are not utterly available, or the cost of them. For example, windows are on back order everywhere. And so if there's a window needs to be replaced, the inspector, as well as the management team, property owners, work there and say, hey, we know that's going to be replaced. It's on back order. It may take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is to get that in. So, but the main thing is that they're communicating and formulating a plan on when things are going to be done. So once something is done, the property owner management team calls the inspector or say, hey, it's ready. Oh, great. I'll be there in 2 weeks or whatever it is, inspected, and then be able to close those cases out. And all that process is online that you can type in an address, put a parcel number in and see kind of what the violations were and then how they are resolved.
Yeah, I understand that. My understanding is that the property owner and the property management company are different from DHC. And I'm just concerned about what confidence you have, and you and Gerald and the team have in the current owner of the bungalows and the existing property management team being able to actually see through and make the remedy the situations in a timely manner to the satisfaction of not only the code people, but importantly to the tenants.
Yeah, me personally, I have full confidence that this will be able to, any of the issues will be resolved. This is why code enforcement is essentially in place for items that may fall. So I have
as you and Gerald are
hesitation.
comfortable. If you and Gerald are comfortable, I'm just concerned about the property owner and the existing property management company.
Yeah,
Ellen,
we want this. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Ellen, I had my hand up in part to address just that very question related to ownership as one item, because there are a few comments that have been made thus far that, yeah, I'd rather not be the one to really point this out, but I want to make sure that in the context of our meeting, these statements don't get misconstrued. So for example, when Eugene made reference to Mosaic earlier, just to clarify the ownership situation at the bungalows are a tax credit property that are currently owned by, officially currently owned by Davidson Limited Partnership. That means there is an investor who is participating and receiving the tax credits, but the management and oversight of the bungalows is the shared responsibility of DHC and Mosaic Development Group, who are also have equal parts in the ownership structure. So when we talk about the owners of the bungalows, it is Davidson Limited Partnership, of which DHC and Mosaic are part, and DHC and Mosaic in particular, we share the responsibility for management and oversight. And I wanted to just make that reference, as Eugene had mentioned Mosaic, so that there can be, just some clarity. But a couple of the other things I felt like just needed to be addressed, so for example, John, when you were speaking and you were making reference to the hope that there's going to be some protection, and things of that nature regarding retaliatory evictions, it sounded like you also made reference to that there was a lot of that going on in the past. And I don't know exactly what you were referring to, but I just wanted to be very clear. Retaliatory evictions are illegal, and the protection is very clear and expressly referenced in North Carolina law. And so there's never been any retaliatory eviction there, and there won't be. And also, just regarding where we are in the course of inspections, I've pointed this out to Eugene. I think we want to also understand, and this is a serious issue, but I think we also want to understand that the minimum housing inspection in and of itself is a very thorough one. It's a very thorough, and it's a very robust process. And I think what we all have to come to terms with is the fact that in the event that inspection does not result in any violations, it doesn't mean that the inspection was less than thorough. It simply means that those particular violations at that time did not exist. And I think that's just important. I think that's important to state, because at times when we talk about it, we talk about it as though it's a foregone conclusion that inspection is going to yield this really long laundry list of needed remedies.
Thank you, Gerald.
Just to clarify, I have never heard of any evictions. I just know that, that's always a worry for people who maybe don't understand those other protections, or, they've had misinformation given to them perhaps by others who have, said there was grounds for eviction if they did something or reported something. So I think the meeting that you're going to have on Monday and will be very helpful in laying all that out.
Elizabeth? Elizabeth, you have your hand up. Elizabeth? There she, okay. Still can't hear you.
Hold on.
There we
Okay,
go.
trying to get off mute.
There you are.
Were there any kind of quarterly inspections performed on those units prior to this big blow up? I mean, like most complexes, they have like an inspection done like quarterly. Is that not in the process there? Part
Yeah,
of the process there?
Elizabeth, that's a great question, and you're absolutely right. Most, most properties are inspected on a regular basis. Some quarterly, some might do it semi-annually, and quarterly inspections are part of the protocol at the bungalows, and they had not taken place until recently because they had been suspended as part of COVID protocols. COVID safety protocols that prevented, entry into the units except for emergency repair situations. And so as those protocols are being lifted, we recently reinstituted the quarterly inspections there because what happens is in the position of being a landlord, there are two primary ways that you will be made aware of needs for repairs. One is if they're actually reported by the tenant, and the other, as you referenced, is when you have those routine inspections that allow you to go in and even observe those repair items that may not have been reported to you. And so that process has been recently reinstituted.
Okay, and said that even before COVID, I listened to some of the comments that the residents made the other night at the town meeting, during the board meeting. And they indicated that some of these repairs have been like for years and years and years. So are you saying that in the prior years, the inspections were not done routinely, or they were ignored? Were they ignored if they had a problem?
Well, unfortunately, I can't really speak to the status of those types of inspections prior to March 8th, 2021. I can't really speak clearly to those, but I can speak to the fact that at the time that I joined DHC and then became part of the partnership as a result, we were already in the health and safety protocols. So they just weren't happening at that point in time. I mean, even with DHC, with the units that we own and operate ourselves, at that particular time, we weren't entering into units except for those cases and situations where it was for emergency repairs. And unfortunately, I just can't really address what the status of those types of inspections were going back too far before I started.
In other words, I'm gathering that it was some negligence on the owners before that time.
I know
And
that-
talking to some, excuse me?
Go ahead, finish, Elizabeth.
In talking to some of the residents there, these there's a report. So it has to go out. It's going to cost a lot more money now to get some of those issues resolved. Whereas it should have been looked at sooner. I know that you can't do anything about the past, but going forward, I would hope that they will have a better system in place that won't happen again.
Elizabeth, I think that that's exactly the process that Eugene has been involved in. He's working closely with Gerald. And I think to your point, there's a recognition of the need for protocol and in part, even the establishment of this board and the fact that there is now a staff level, director of affordable housing and equity. So I think that we could be optimistic, and I don't want to be in the position of this board stating in any way that there was negligence or something on something that we literally just have been brought into. So I think that the concerns that you've noted, the concerns that Eugene has been dealing with, and the points that Gerald has made are all hopefully pointing to the fact that things are being resolved. And then I would just say, I think that this situation with the bungalows is a great illustration as we start working with the consulting agency also in the creation of a playbook. There are takeaways that are important from this experience that we need to make sure that we acknowledge and incorporate into how we move forward in both addressing that existing inventory, but also then in working with assigning the, codes and covenants and maintenance issues and things that we have been doing consistently now as a board with each application that has come in front of us. Eugene or Marianne or Gerald, Ellen, anyone else who's been directly involved in this, do you have anything that you want to add to the issue at the moment?
Jennifer, I understand that. I do understand what you're saying, but I just want to make sure that the people there are reassured that going forward, this won't happen again.
Do you feel like from the conversations that you've had, do you feel like they have felt listened to now with the steps that have been taken, or do you feel like there's still a disconnect?
I think it's a trust issue.
A trust issue. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I
maybe
can
the only
speak
way
to-
to do that is, time.
I think in general, I recognize my position coming in, there's just a foundation has been mistrust for a lot of reasons, even with government and some of our partners across the board. I think myself, while I'm here, while Gerald's here and others, we're here to restore that trust back. I think for me, that's, if not the most important thing that I do. So I'm actually very excited to be involved because this, at a bare minimum, I get to actually meet people and meet residents. And so Monday, I'm really looking forward to, because this will be really the first time that we're actually getting engaged legally in COVID with folks. And so I think to be able to build relationships with folks is important. Even talking with the team that we're working on this all together, but had a chance to talk with one of our residents that had some concerns. And really, I think we can even build out on top of this is how do we get folks back to talking to one another again? From my understanding, there used to be community days at bungalows. How do you start to bring that back? What participation can we do as the town, at this board, to support that in the equity ones? And so there are community events that we can support and get folks talking to one another again outside of COVID. I know this will hopefully go away one day. Everyone's been kind of cooped inside. I think this would be a good opportunity to obviously address the issue, but let's use this issue to help build community. And I think this is a great opportunity to do that. So I also want to be able to talk about that in this process of, hey, once we get through that, okay, let's talk about how we get together. And so I think that's an important piece because this is about people. I think that's why I'm here, because I actually do care and love folks. So I think we have an opportunity to do that.
Well, I had to pose that question and let that in, bring that out because, I live like right behind the bungalows and a lot of the people there, well, they're my neighbors and they know that I am on the board for the Affordable Housing District board. And I do get asked some questions. And I just want to know what to tell them and reassure them that they can trust us, Eugene and Gerald, to make things right.
But also this board, and you're part of that. So I think that's important.
Well, they always say
piece.
Eugene.
I think that's an important piece.
The town meeting, and they heard you two voices and the commissioners. So I can relate it to them.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
That's an important, that's important. Aw. All right. There's a lot of good takeaways from this conversation. like I said, I want to be able to make sure that we capture that and include it as we are working with that consulting agency. So any other, or are we good to close this portion of the agenda out? Gesundheit, John? Okay, that will take us on to the town-owned properties, 112 and 145 Mock Road.
All right. Yeah, so this is a quick update. I know we have talked about this a little bit before. We just want to give you an update. Work is going to start. Just wanted to share a quick presentation with you in regards to that. All right, can everyone see? So as you know, the town had purchased a total of 5 homes a couple of years ago. This is prior to me coming on board. I think these were actually good opportunities. These are all exist in West Davidson. I think the goal for why we purchased these properties as our elected officials to really stop the issue of gentrification. What's been happening, you have folks that may age out and then sell properties, and those properties typically go to the market. The market usually gobbles that up, tear down the house, build a house that's well above kind of what the existing homes are there, and it causes property values to get heightened, and then you do start to lose a sense of a community or who folks have historically lived there. So one of the reasons why I believe our town made a bold move of purchasing these properties to keep them, for one, affordable, but also allow the context of the neighborhood to also remain in place. And so part of those properties, we actually purchased 2 on Mock Road. One is actually a contributing factor to the local historical district. That is a good thing, but maybe a little bit costly in some areas. I'll talk a little bit about that. But also the other 3 are throughout the neighborhood. 1 on Lakeside Drive, 2 on Mock Circle, and another one right next door to the 112 Mock Road. And so 2 of them are currently vacant, and then 3 are actually occupied. When the town actually purchased these properties, 3 of them are already currently occupied. The tenants in them actually fall within our affordable housing kind of range. On average, they're around below 60% of AMI. That's typically the sweet spot for the folks that we want to target for a rental product anyway. So it was a good purchase, and you're able to continue to rent to people that fall in that range. It is not the goal of the town to keep these properties in our hands. We recognize during COVID, we didn't want to displace anyone throughout that process. And they also kind of fit the income guidelines for our affordable program anyway. So they're kind of as is. We had some work that we needed to do to essentially all the units. For the first 2, we're currently working on those. Work should be starting in the next week or so. We had to get some updated bids on those because of the rising costs, and we have a budget, and we needed to make sure we can do what we need to do and meet that budget. And so we're going to be starting that work in the next couple of weeks. And for the other 3, they had some critical home repairs that needed to be done, so we were able to take care of those for all 3 of those. That work started in the summertime and wrapped up in October. And so we're excited that those are all kind of taken care of at this point. And our 2 homes, we're going to look to actually sell those after the work is done. We're targeting somewhere between 80 to 100% of AMI. This is kind of, and what our board has kind of, the goal was to at least get 80% back of our initial investment. We'll be able to do that. We're thinking the price points will be, and so we're excited to work on this. Habitat is our contractor on this, so we're excited to work with them on this particular project. This gives you a quick of what the homes look like today. I hope and expect a new picture in a couple of months when we actually get things whipped into shape. And so this is what they will look like. I'm excited about the after picture. I think we're going to be able to get house and families here. Each of these are 3 bedrooms. One is a 3-bedroom, 2 baths. The other one is 3 bedrooms and 1 bath. So that still kind of fits in a good sweet spot for home ownership for a family of 3 to 4. I think we'll have plenty of opportunities and qualified buyers within that range. And so we're excited to kind of move forward with this, but just wanted to share you a quick update. We finally got things moving and got final bids on materials and those types of things. So we're excited. This will be our first project that we will officially do on town. And so this will be some of the most available things that we'll be able to get folks in the next, hopefully, couple of months. And so one of the things that we talked about internally is really giving an opportunity for the folks that have already been pre-qualified, that the list DEC manage, getting that information out to them, but also staff. We also have, as the town, we do have sustainability goals. Most of our employees for the town actually live outside of town and commute on average 45 minutes. So it would be a great thing if we're able to at least get one of them that someone that works for the town to live here. And so I do think we have an opportunity to capitalize on that. Or for honestly, any other employer in town, most folks that work here don't live here. And so I think that's part of why we're all here and why we have an affordable housing program. And so we're excited that this will be the first step in that. The other 3, it's going to be a part of our affordable housing plan. They're going to be evaluating each of those properties to see if it's the highest and best use of those properties. And so we'll have a chance to kind of dive in a little bit deeper in those. So we're excited about that process starting as well. But this is a kind of a quick update of kind of where we are in regards to the town-owned properties. Questions?
Great job.
Well, we're starting. I want to get through the process and get people in them. I think Laura and Gerald could attest the feeling when you get the person in, and get the family in. And so I won't celebrate until we get there. So, but
we're making the first step. We're pulling the
First
permits
step.
right now. So the first steps.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Before we adjourn, we need to talk about December's board meeting. The date for it, if we stayed on our schedule, would be December 23rd, it turns out, which is probably not the best. So our options are to either cancel that one or to move it forward somewhat. And so I wanted to get your all's thoughts on that. And there's some things that would be impacted, if we miss that meeting, I would say. So if people are open to the idea of bringing it forward a little bit, I think that might be good. If people would prefer to not, to just skip the December meeting, then I think we should entertain that discussion. So how do you all feel?
And also, just to add some context to this, I know we're a new board and we have some lessons learned from other boards. Typically what happens with other boards, they usually have a break in July because it's the summer months and people are on vacation. And I know that was a struggle for our folks to get together during the summer, July timeframe. But December is typically another month where people actually take off just because people are traveling. So I think we have if we're looking to do it, the 16th or the 9th might make sense because you're getting the further away you're from Christmas, the better. If we decide to have a meeting in December, just want to put that out there. Lessons learned from boards that are much older than us.
Aren't we normally meeting on the 3rd Thursday? Or is it the 4th? The 23rd seems like that's the 4th.
Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, Johnny, but you're correct. You're correct.
So the date that we would normally meet, sticking with our normal schedule, would be the 16th, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, well then, Eugene, you and I were wrong this afternoon.
Yep. And so that puts it a week out before Christmas break. So also it gets a little close, but I think this group can decide what kind of what makes sense. I don't know how early people start traveling, but that's something to consider.
What do you see on the agenda for December? Is there anything that's mission critical such that a meeting must happen in December, or could we take up whatever needs to be discussed in January?
I think the biggest thing, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, is our affordable housing implementation plan. We're gonna have our kickoff meeting, hopefully in a couple of weeks. I'll just quickly talk about that. We have our consultants finally under contract, so we're able to kind of move forward. Just took a little while to kind of get that all solidified. And so we were able to do that. We're targeting December 1st for our kickoff meeting. Within that meeting, we'll have some of our town leadership, but also our committee members are part of this group in that meeting. This is really kind of to get people in, talk to them, and then kind of talk about next steps. My hope is that they can attend if we do have a December meeting, to come to this board and then talk a little bit further about kind of where we're going to go outside of that December 1st meeting. So that would be a topic, but not to say that couldn't wait until January. But I do know that we're kind of getting into that realm of engagement. So. And also, John, we have been talking offline regards to got a chance to see a builder that actually does metal framing, and so they have a site that they actually do a lot of that work in to really provide their own materials. This is something I'm actually really excited about, but there might be an opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit more detail, but also there may be a field trip opportunity there. And so I know that John and I have spoken a couple of times about that. I'm not saying that would happen in December, but that could be a potential topic in the coming meetings.
So on the plus side, it could be a very short meeting. but those are worthy issues. So I'm in favor of keeping our December meeting.
The other option would be to keep the December meeting, with the idea that the consultants can come on the 16th. And if they can't, then maybe we go ahead and cancel and wait till January. But go ahead and hold the 16th and hope that the consultants can come.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. Great idea.
Great.
Okay. All right. That looks like a yes. We're going to hold to that. I think that's it. Are there any, David, did you have anything to close out with? Any comments?
How are we doing on the recruitment and nomination process for replacement of graduating seniors on this committee?
Graduating seniors. But we did actually have,
No pun intended.
yeah, we did have two members that were going to be added on, part of the process. I would say two new members. A part of that was recommended to the boards at our last meeting. They'll be voting on the finalized recommended folks this coming Tuesday. So we'll officially be able to say, yes, we have two new board members in conjunction with Mary Kim as well as Michael will be able to continue their terms along with two added folks. We are going to be replacing Crystal and then David, your position. So I think we're going to be in good hands. I think we got some really good candidates. So I'm excited to get that rolling in the new part of the years.
But to David's point, that which spoils, a little bit of a goodbye, but yes, like if we don't meet in December, we don't have an opportunity to properly send David off. So.
No, that wasn't my point, but.
But I thought we were having a Christmas party at David's place.
And, that's right. I forgot.
That's what I thought we were going to happen. So
we are. There's going to be a parade right in front of my house.
That's right.
All right.
I'm bringing the eggnog. All right. So, okay. That being said, it looks like we are going to hold that date for December. David doesn't have anything else to add. Ellen, do you have any closing No, Annie? Gerald?
Done.
I'll save you for last, Eugene. Laura? Elizabeth? Mary? Oh, whoops, there's Elizabeth. Go ahead.
No, not really.
Okay. Mary?
Me? No.
Sorry, Mary Walsh?
Oh, sorry.
John?
I think
Okay, Eugene?
Thank you for all attending. I think we've done some good work tonight, and I'm excited to kind of move forward on several different fronts. So, guys, thank you again for your work and your patience with us from the staff standpoint.
All
Thank
right.
Eugene.
Mary
and-
Ann, there she is.
Yep, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Thank you for having me, and I think it'll be great to move that ordinance forward next week. So thanks for all your input, everybody.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
John made the motion, seconded by.
Annie Poor just texted me that she's the second.
All right. Seconded
that-
by Annie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We are officially adjourned. I wish everybody a wonderful holiday next week if you celebrate. And we'll see you guys in December.
Great. Happy
All right,
Thanksgiving.
guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.